Okay, sir, we are now recorded. The session is live. Thank you for everybody tuning in to another installment of Leaders in the Force. Today we have the pleasure of hearing and learning from Colonel Antwan Dunmyer. Colonel Dunmyer is currently the commander of the Airborne and Ranger Training Brigade at Fort Benning, Georgia. He is a career infantry officer that has commanded at all levels from company to brigade, and today he is here to help broaden our perspective and help teach us how service in the infantry prepares us multidimensionally. Sir, again, thank you for supporting this effort. I'm going to cede the floor to you for any opening remarks.
No, Juan, like I said earlier offline, I appreciate you and Team Rattler putting something like this together, because it is a strategic purpose by not just having African Americans, you know, in the Army, but minorities and a diversity of talent, right? Because when you look at what our Army is going through right now with transformation and modernization and the focus on the different threats and emerging threats that are out there, I mean, all the ideas from a multitude and a broader perspective is going to be required to help us fight and win. So again, hats off to you and the team, and I'm looking forward to this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. So with that opening statement, you just explained why you feel this is there's an institutional imperative to support this. But now I'm going to ask you, sir, what's your best, I guess, estimate or hypothesis as to why this is a current problem in terms of having a deficit of diversity in combat arms?
No, you know, it's not a binary problem in my opinion. I mean, one, you know, the Army as an organization has to take a look at, you know, some of its programs and the access to opportunities and a lot of other things that an institution does. And honestly, the Army is doing that right now with its diversity, inclusion, equity, you know, initiative. The Chief of Staff of the Army's People First initiative. I mean, it's very clear that we are refining many policies across the Army to increase the range of diversity in our force. But the other part is tied to the community, right? And the Black community has a role in this, because there's some probably biased perceptions or, you know, real with having had service members, moms, dads, brothers, sisters who served in, you know, past conflicts when, you know, either African Americans or minorities were not integrated into the force, or some of the things that we saw African Americans dealing with coming out of World War II, as well as coming out of Vietnam. And so there's some scar tissue that I believe is still as in part with our Black community that we just got to get beyond to give our kids the opportunity to want to serve. In my opinion, I mean, I have a 13-year-old son, and you know, I'm of the belief that every, you know, able-bodied male should at least serve for the experiences that you will gain, the relationships that you will build, the opportunities that you will have in the Army that it's not that you wouldn't have from remaining localized, and that's to your, you know, area that you grew up in, and some other things. And I mean, one thing that creates diverse of thought and understanding is being able to deal with a diverse population of people. And then, you know, at the end of the day, it's up to the individual themselves, and it starts with drive, desire, and determination. Like, individually, what do you have a passion for? What do you want to do? And so the Army is only one part of this. I mean, the community, as we well know it, you know, good saying, when I grew up, it takes a village to raise a child. And based on what you see in your community and what you know, that you could obviously be led down that path. And so this is not a binary issue. And there are multiple actors that have a role in us being able to do better.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I agree. It's a multifaceted problem. From my foxhole here as an instructor at FAMU, I've approached the situation from an information perspective, and I'm trying to alleviate the information gap or information asymmetry that exists at smaller programs by building this interview series and by hoping to educate cadets as to the experiences that can be gained from service in the maneuver branches, aside from what they already understand from anecdotal family experiences or from, I guess, pop culture and film and TV. I think the danger that presents itself right now is cadets see the infantry as, ruck marches, ranger school, and being tired and hungry, and they don't see, a platoon leader or a company commander that is the manager of a 100-person enterprise that has to interface with multiple occupational domains, to include logistics, to include personnel. So that is the aim of this series, sir. And you have a long career in the infantry, and your experience is going to help elucidate those occupational translations. So without further ado, sir, can you please tell us a bit about your background growing up and what motivated you to join the Army?
Yeah, young kid from Charleston, South Carolina, man, and I won't go through my long history. The good thing about being a commander is all that information is on your website. So, we operate in a world where people can just click a button and see who you are. So I'll spare you the details. What I will share with you though is I had a couple of great examples, and this was internal to the Dunmeyer family as well as external. And this is where I go back to the community having a role in this. So both of my uncles served in the Army. One was a quartermaster officer. The other one was a transportation officer. One was airborne qualified. The other was not. But I was in junior ROTC in high school, and my first example of what an infantryman was, what they stood for, the way they looked, was a guy by the name of Major Retired Leroy Moutry. And I'll tell you, I love the way he used voice inflection as he issued commands. And back in the day it was, hey, the BDUs, battle dress uniform, and it was nothing to break starch, right? You'd get that thing starched up, and he was always of immaculate appearance. His boots were always spit shined, and I looked at him as a model and an example of what I wanted to be, how I wanted to look. And he was physically fit. He was mentally sharp. He was morally straight. And so he had all of the attributes and characteristics that, incited me or ignited me to want to be an infantryman. You fast forward a little bit, and then I got to South Carolina State, and I have another great example by the name of Major General Retired Abraham J. Turner. And here was a guy, stood about 6'5", 6'6", Ranger qualified, all the scary badges, master rated, jump master wings, Pathfinder. He had his combat infantryman's badge. He had a mustard stain. He had his 82nd Airborne Division patch on his right arm. And the one thing about Major Moutry, he had a 101st patch on his right arm. And I'll get to that in a second. But these guys inspired me. And it was really about how they looked, right? It was truly about how they look. And so Lieutenant General Retired Grange talked about, when he came in the Army, and this was during, World War II era, and he first went to the recruiting station to sign up to join. One of the things that, and he had an interest in being an engineer, right? But one of the things that led him to becoming an infantryman and a paratrooper was in the recruiting station, he saw a picture on the wall of a model paratrooper with his boots bloused, just looking what we call, strack, and just immaculate appearance. And so that was Major Moutry and Major General Retired Abe Turner for me. I mean, because a lot of the instructors that I had at South Carolina State, they were not infantry, minus the non-commissioned officers that we had, but none of the officers, minus my assistant PMS, Keith Bailey, and he wasn't South Carolina State grad. I think he was in Hampton grad, but Ranger qualified, Airborne qualified, and he would ruck march like crazy, and he was a technical, tactical expert. I mean, my PMS at the time was a field artilleryman by the name of Dud M. Lundy, and he could run. We'd get in formations, and his little feet would turn, and next thing you know, we'd be all over Orangeburg, South Carolina, and when we're done, we're at about 6 to 7 to 8 miles into it. And so it was a compilation of people and the environment that I grew up in. And like I talked about earlier, ultimately the decision was mine. And it took me looking at those modeled examples and saying, that's what I wanted to be. I mean, and I had great instructors who were, the quartermaster, right? Chemical and some other things. But that wasn't, to me, that was not impressive, and they carried themselves very, very professionally. They were physically fit, but I wanted to lead soldiers, right? And not that you don't lead soldiers in the other branches, but when you talk about, going back to doughboys coming out of, the trenches in World War I, like, hey, follow me. Like, I wanted to be that guy up front, leading a formation, leading the charge, and making decisions that would have, positive effects to our nation's ability to defend itself and win wars. So.
Thank you, sir. So if I were to summarize that, you benefited from, I guess, the archetypical infantry examples. And again, coming back to our situation here at FAMU and smaller programs, that is the problem that we struggle with, that cadets typically at HBCUs don't get access to these examples of archetypical infantry officers, and that's what the General Patent Internship Program is trying to alleviate as a cadet command initiative. But I've only been in the Army 4 years now, so I think it's imperative for the Army as an institution to, I guess, modify their talent management and how they place successful combat arms officers mid-career back at institutions like this.
Yeah, let me add something to that point that you just made, and so I agree. But what I don't want us to walk away from this being, and I totally agree with you that the Army needs to find the best way to do this. But I don't want any cadet who's watching this to think that the officer, the infantry officer, or the combat arms officer that comes to the school has to be black, right? There are many different examples, and I think the Army needs to get it right and not just sending African Americans infantry officers, because there's very few of us, right, that back to HBCUs, but finding the right person that cares about truly developing and investing in future leaders, regardless of the color of your skin. And when we find the right people to go back and invest in our young leaders, that's all that matters. I don't really care about the color of your skin, right? I have many mentors that don't look like me, right? And I seek them out because they have the attributes and characteristics that I look for, from a moral standpoint, from a tactical standpoint, and just an appearance standpoint. Like, that's what should drive us in seeking a mentor or, following a passion that we may not even know that we have yet, right? You got to try something before you like it, if you will.
Absolutely, and I agree, sir, with that point about your mentors not needing to be, look like you, but it's about how they develop you. My S3 in my line battalion in Germany and my company commander were very developmental, and they weren't Hispanic, they weren't Colombian, but it's about taking the time to ask me, where do you want to end up in your Army career? What's going on with your family? That sort of individual mentorship and development doesn't need to be bound or constrained by. Okay, sir. So South Carolina State Infantry, and then right now you're sitting at Brigade Command of ARTB. So you've commanded companies, battalions, and currently brigade, and you've sat on staffs all the way up to division, I presume. So can you please explain to our cadets how all of that experience is more than just pulling triggers and ruck marching. All of that experience, how would you translate that to a civilian employer so that our cadets understand the benefits of being a leader in the infantry branch?
Yeah. Well, leadership is about, a number of things. And one of those things is, envisioning or being able to have a vision and see an organization for what it is and what it can be. And then being able to align those line priorities and people with the objectives that need to be obtained to be able to drive that organization in the right direction for it to, excel or be great. And as a young combat arms leader, you will have more opportunities, and I'll talk about being in the Army. You have greater opportunities to lead people because there's also the diversity in branches, right? You're a chemical officer, I'm an infantry officer, but guess what? I don't work for you, right? You get attached to me. I now have to purposefully understand the value of your combat capability and then integrate you into movement and maneuver and what I'm able to do to close with and destroy the enemy. And that's the biggest difference. I don't know about you, but I like being on teams, but I also like being a captain of the team and being able to, establish intent and then provide direction and then motivate people to get after it, because you tie the individual to the purpose of the organization to lead it in the right direction. And that's what an infantryman does. Everybody works for you. There's never a time where I'm going over to brief an aviation officer or to brief a logistics officer. Matter of fact, as a battalion commander in 235 Infantry Cacti in Hawaii, I had rifle companies, I had a heavy weapons company led by an infantryman, but I also had a forward support company led by a logistician. And I didn't have to only think about, hey, how was I getting, increasing the training and physical readiness of the infantry guys. It was one, how do I make a team and build that team chemistry for us to be able to, synchronize our efforts and have unity of purpose to get after those things that the Army is going to be able to ask us to do. And so that's the big thing within the Army is, hey, and it's not that, you always work for somebody, because that's why the hierarchy, our structure of the Army and the chain of command, it's what we do. But everybody's going to report to you. You're going to have engineers that you're going to have to synchronize and integrate into your operations. You're going to have to, integrate fires into your maneuver plan. Again, all of these guys work for you, right? I don't know about you, but hey, I like having the challenge of being able to do that, and the complexity of bringing things and people together for a common goal, right? And a quartermaster officer doesn't get to do that. He just looks at his small little element and figure out, hey, how do I support that guy, the infantry officer? All right, transition into taking this, how do we transfer, our capabilities outside of the Army? And again, some people I've talked to were like, hey, what do you do after you retire? Are you going to be a security guard? No, that's not what officers do, right? And not even our non-commissioned officers are doing that anymore, because our non-commissioned officer even put in, they're always in a leadership position, but they're put in situations where they are coordinating, they're synchronizing, they're integrating, and being able to bring people and things together again for, to meet an objective or to meet a goal. Any organization that you join, it's going to have people, it's going to have tasks and requirements, and then it's going to have a little bit of time. And how do you take that, conceptualize and understand what the organization needs, then operationalize those thoughts while bringing people together to integrate and formulate the best way to move towards that objective. That's the civilian world. A lot of what I do at this level, especially as a brigade commander, is I don't do a lot of live fires and other things. Now, from a PT perspective, still doing foot marches, still doing runs, I still jump, right? Because I'm on jump status and some other things. But a lot of once you become a field grade officer, and it's even required, as a lieutenant and captain, I mean, you got to be able to think. You got to take time to reflect and understand the entire environment around you. And so a lot of your job is going to be, how do I posture my organization for success? And whether that's from a physical readiness, that's a maintenance readiness, that's an administrative, readiness perspective, or training readiness perspective, you're building calendars, you're building plans, you're writing orders, right? That is the system of an organization. So you're doing more than, just getting out hunting, right? I mean, that's what privates do, man. I mean, we get paid to, lead, coach, develop, and inspire greatness, right? Now, we do that through understanding what our soldiers have to be able to do, but we also do that by being able to lead them through that. Over.
Yes, sir. So, if I were to summarize that, the skill set that an infantry officer brings to a corporate setting is the ability to orient a team and lead them to achieve a common purpose. And that happens in the military, that happens in the corporate setting. So anybody thinking infantry doesn't apply needs to reevaluate, hey, what is a chief of operations or a chief executive officer going to do? They're going to steer this organization towards their goal. So anywhere in management, infantry applies. So, sir, next question. As the ARTB commander, you are sitting at the helm of, in my opinion, the crucible, de facto crucible identity defining experience of a young infantry officer, Ranger School. So, as the commander of ARTB, what is your opinion or your perspective of what sets infantry lieutenants apart from their peers in other branches?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. It's going through that daily crucible, right? That gives you pride. Muhammad Ali says, "Hey, the fight is won before you even enter the ring," right? And what that means is the amount of and level of preparation that it takes. One, it is gratifying on the back end when you win, when you succeed, right? And in life, to get to your goal, hey, you have to prepare, and then you have to have the discipline to put aside what you want now for what you want next, or what you really desire. And so, for what I do here, and when you think about it, I mean, that's what it's all about. And again, it goes back to my comment earlier. Hey, when all these people work for you, you get paid to synchronize and integrate people, because the Army's not just about people. The world's about people, right? People build machines. People operate and manipulate machines to do what we needed to do to produce, outcomes that we desire. But there's a human perspective to everything we do in our personal lives as well as professional lives. And when you have the ability as an infantryman to be that guy, not only in your small little area, but also being able to reach across the aisle, if you will, with people who don't think like you, right? Because brigade commanders, operational brigade commanders that get deployed, guess what? You have military working dog teams that work for you. You may have 3-letter acronym civilian agencies that work for you. And you're bringing all of these people to the table to truly understand what they do. Well, guess who's not doing that? A quartermaster officer or chemical officer. You don't own, an area of operation. That's an infantry guy, right? You're doing what you need to do as a part of that infantry mission to be able to achieve goals and objectives. And so again, when you ask that question, what separates us? Everything, right? Not just the scary badges we wear, but the experience that we've had in being able to lead through adversity and leading diverse organizations from being a lieutenant. Because as a young PL, you got an engineer squad or engineer team, right? That's attached to you. You got mortars that could come over to you. You know, you're coordinating with the distro platoon leader in the FSC, to make sure that, hey, your supplies get to the point where you need it to be able to, extend your operations or sustain you in the fight, right? And there's no other branch that does that in the Army. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. To briefly summarize it, the infantry is the center of mass to which all other
Center of
functions
gravity.
gravitate to. Center of gravity to which, I didn't want to say gravitate twice, to which all other functions gravitate to. Okay, sir, final question, and it's related to another dimension in diversity, and it's gender diversity. For our cadets who aren't aware, the infantry was formerly not open for service for female both soldiers and officers prior to 2016, but in 2016 there was a policy reversal that opened it up to women. So, sir, what is your assessment of the current state of this gender integration, and what steps still need to happen for progress?
Yeah, so 2015 is when women were integrated. I say again, 2015 is when we had the first female who came through Ranger School. And I'll tell you, it's been phenomenal. I want to say we've had over, 50 females, 50 females, over 50 females that have graduated this course. I mean, some are leading platoons. I think it is a couple company commanders. Some are young non-commissioned officers. Not all are infantry women. But at the end of the day, man, it's the right thing to do, right? I mean, what we look for is qualified talent. Are you qualified, right? I mean, I look at this generation. I've been in the Army, almost 23 years, and I've seen the ebb and flow and how we've adjusted. And we have a generation now that's into virtualism, right? It's this right here, and guys are wicked smart. Don't get me wrong, but for the infantry, it's about close with and destroy the enemy. And the fact that we have women who want to showcase their talents on the world stage to be able to do what we do at the height of our country being at 2 decades of war. And I mean, it's phenomenal. My hat's off to them. And I heard one of your other interviews. For me, it's an easy decision. Why? Because as you well know, there was a time where African Americans were not allowed to serve. And you look at our country, right? I mean, there were freedoms that we didn't have, but that no longer exists. There is nothing but access and opportunity. Now, along the way, there might not be a system, or there may be a flawed system, but people are the center point along that route. And we just need people to understand that, hey, it is about diversity, inclusion, and equality. And it's about having a team of talented people, right? Running a meritocracy, right? It's not about favoritism. It's about, hey, one, do you have a desire to do this? Right. And it's really about attitude and mindset. I'll take attitude and mindset over talent or skills any day. Because I could teach you how to do something, but I can't put that energy and, optimism and enthusiasm into you to desire to do it, or to be able to, to want to continue to do it and do it for the right reasons. So the short answer, and that was a long way to say it, but I'm all for it. It's the right thing to do. We're already doing it. We've been doing it, and we continue to, get better every day by, exercising leadership to make sure that, hey, everyone is being treated with dignity and respect, and we're not putting our foot behind the door to to be obstructionists in any form of fashion. Over.
Thank you, sir. My comment to the women or female cadets that are considering and look at maybe a small amount of women in the infantry compared to other branches. I think Armor has seen more female officers commissioned into that branch, but I would say dare to get there, and then pull the people behind you, right? Be that example for the female cadets next year. So don't be, I guess, dissuaded from joining just because right now the numbers aren't as high. Sir, with that, we're concluding all the questions that I had prepared. Thank you again for contributing to this effort, donating your time and perspective. I'll cede the floor to you for any closing remarks.
Yeah, I'll tell you again, Juan, I really appreciate you and the team putting this together. You know, we had the first African American president ever, and I'll tell you, prior to him being a president, he was a senator. And if he didn't try, we would not have had the first, right? We have had many firsts, to include our current Secretary of Defense, and there are varying examples that I could provide. But it's not about being the first anymore, man. I mean, because the opportunities are out there, we have access to things. But if we keep stopping ourselves from, entering the fray, right, or seizing an opportunity, then we'll keep this song and dance of, well, we only got, one 4-star general. Well, we got one 4-star general. Not only, I don't believe it's only because the system didn't allow it. It was because we didn't have a lot of people coming up, and I think it was 1977 when, Sec Army Clifford Alexander, he made the decision to look at a bunch of officers who provided him a promotion list, and because it didn't have a minority on it, he sent it back. Well, guess what? When they started selecting highly qualified black officers, Colin Powell was one of those people that had an opportunity, and look at him now. And so again, the opportunities are out there, but we gotta want to do it. And the Army is self-correcting, and we're a learning organization. We're learning every day, and we're getting better every day, and we're adjusting policies every day. But the communities have a role in this as well, in being able to, teach and inform and educate is probably a better way to say it. Inform and educate our young African American officers out there. And then it has to be the individual. What I tell young leaders, don't be afraid to be an infantryman. Like, I didn't get here by myself. And I just want you all to know, if you're interested in being an infantryman, there is a long list from general officer on down to current serving lieutenants that are currently in the formation, doing everything that we can to lay the right path, so some of the challenges that many of us have dealt with, you won't have to deal with. And I'll tell you, we say at South Carolina State, the long green line, and that green line for South Carolina State graduates is very long. And there's a lot of people, before me that are, some have since retired, some still in the military. It was just announced today that, Brigadier General Milford Beagle, the commander at Fort Jackson, well, guess who's going to be the next 10th Mountain Division commander? Like, that's huge. You got Major General Xavier Brunson out in 7th Infantry Division right now, and the announcement is he'll be the next, deputy 18th Airborne Corps, I think that I read. Like, that's huge, man. And there are countless other officers that are out there. So again, my message is don't run from it. And the last thing I'll say is, I had the opportunity to sit a part of a panel at Morgan State University, and this was, I want to say, 2018, and the theme of the panel was why go combat arms. There were only 2 combat arms, at least colonels, in the room. It was myself and Colonel Jabari Miller, commanding 3rd Brigade, 1 AD right now. And I sat there the entire time, and I just wanted to listen to what were some of the reasons on why officers weren't branching infantry. And you heard everything from, well, like you said, they do a lot of road marches, they're out in the field all the time, they're on the front lines, and they'll get killed first, and some other things. And so my counter to all of those was, well, one, everybody goes to the field. Matter of fact, sometimes the combat service support branches are out in the field more, because you got to be able to prepare to support and sustain the infantry. I had a buddy out and, commanded the 526 BSB in Hawaii, Colonel Sean Kelly. He was out in the field more than any of the infantry battalions, because he wanted to be prepared to be able to sustain and support the entire brigade and not just, one battalion. And, I asked the question about I said, we talk about getting killed. We're in Baltimore right now. There's a pretty high murder rate per capita, man. And so don't tell me about that. And so my point was, let's not make excuses. And what I appreciated about that was, following that meeting and my spill, I had 3 young cadets who came up to me. Guess what? Right now, those 3 cadets, and this was 2 years ago, right? 18, 19, 20, yeah, almost 3 years ago. Those 3 cadets are here either in the infantry officer basic leader course or getting ready to start, right? And so if you want to do it, and I'm in contact with them, they got a few other senior leaders who have reached out to them and open arms, and we will continue to invest in them to make sure they understand the right things to think about and do to be effective and potentially successful. You got to be effective first, I believe, before you can be successful. So there are a lot of us out here, and I say sign up, but I also told the group, you got to want to do this. And if you don't want to be an infantryman, I don't want you to be an infantryman, because our soldiers deserve the best. And that's not the best because you're the most talented officer. That's because you got the right mindset, and you come and bring consistent, results and leadership every day. And that's what I want in the infantry. So I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. So for everybody, that was Colonel Dunmeyer. This wraps up our interview. Thank you for watching. I ask that, if you benefited anything from this conversation, please share with your peers at your school or buddies anywhere else across the nation. This information will benefit cadets everywhere. Thank you, sir.